To braid or not to braid? Without question, braid has a steadfast place in angling, and respectively, given the right fishing situations, it will offer a number of attributes that other main lines just can't. So the big questions are when, where and why is it a good idea to have braid as your main line? Well, hang about with me as I talk over how braid can offer you more in your angling, ideal situations to use it in, and I'll also go over a number of specifics that may help you make a choice between using braid or conventional mono as your main line. What is going on, guys? A very warm welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing very well and that you've been able to get out on the bank in search of some carp. Over the years, anglers have bounced back and forth, myself included, based off suggestions that braid is actually stronger or better than mono, and vice versa. Well, in my opinion, they both lend themselves perfectly to a number of different angling situations, whether it be the need to cast more distance or fish in the snaggiest waters and needing a main line that will really hold up to this abuse. But for the time being though, we're going to push the mono off to one side as we'll actually be focusing on the braid. I'll be looking at mono later on in another video. I figure I would take some time out to show you my preferred braid and talk over exactly what it can offer you in your angling. Braid checks all the boxes from low diameter, zero stretch, super abrasion resistance, and for me the best one, zero memory. Right here I have a PB Products GatorBraid. It's the two-tone and I'm using it in a 35lb test. This also has a diameter of 0.35mm and it's ideal for mid to long range casting as it is a low diameter offering zero stretch. This means that once the cast has been made, there is less wind resistance on the main line, which means less drag and in theory leading to more accuracy during your cast. In my opinion, it's hands down made to do these jobs very, very well. Like everything though, there are pros and cons to using specific items just like this braid. So I thought I'd share with you a number of pros and the cons that I personally found while out fishing using this braid over the last few months. So firstly, the pros. Braid is highly responsive, meaning you will feel more than you have ever felt before. Whether it be casting a lead out with a rig on and feeling it down to being connected to a fish, every movement will be sent back up the braid and into the rod you're holding, allowing you to feel all of that in your hands. Another pro is that it's got no memory. Braid having no memory versus that of conventional mono means it will offer fantastic line lay on the spool. This in turn will allow the line to come off with the spool with more ease, aiding you in getting a little more distance when you need it. Number 3, it's ideal to use with your marker float, lead or spom setup, and since it has zero stretch, as I said before, using braid really does increase how much you feel through your rod. And this is exactly what happens when marking up a new swim or dragging a lead around in a few likely spots. It will soon help you build more of a visual as to what's happening under the surface, and in turn allowing you to make better choices on how you approach your new swim. Number 4, it is ideal for fishing up to snags or overhanging tree lines. Since there is no give in the line like conventional mono that does have stretch, it allows you to cast a lot closer to overhanging trees or underwater snags. And once connected with a fish, without giving the fish line, also known as fishing locked up, this will aid you to extract those fish from those snaggy areas without losing the fish. So flipping things over now, like I mentioned with every pro, there is always a con, but in this case, they're really actually not that bad. Even though there are some small cons, in some ways, they're actually kind of pros. So, the cons of braid. Due to the makeup of braid, it's generally more costly than mono, and it's generally due to the way that its manufacturing process happens. However, while it is a fair bit more in terms of cost to buy a bulk spool like this, in the long term, it's well worth it. Keeping in mind, this is a spool of 1,000 meters, by no means cheap. However, using a spool of cost-effective mono as backing before spooling up with the braid means I'm able to fill up 5 of these spools, 200 meters of braid on each spool, and that roughly converts to about 220 yards of braid, more than enough for the biggest cast more than enough of any cast I'm ever going to do, and a little bit more for good measure. Another slight downside to braid is no stretch. It is one thing that comes up very often for some anglers new to using braid. This can be a little troublesome, and sudden surge from a fish under the rod tip, if you're not prepared, could result in a hook pull and obviously losing a fish. Ultimately, this really comes down to being prepared for this to happen. You're setting your front drag accordingly, so if the fish does power off, the rod and reel work as it's intended, resulting in you safely landing the fish. And lastly, but by no means any less important, using braid as a main line on some fisheries is a big no-no. And in the UK especially, as well as Europe on some waters, it's just not allowed and it cannot be used. I would highly suggest checking in with the location you're going to, or at least have a good read up on the rules and regulations before you go to fish. Here in the USA, there are no bans on the use of braided main lines, but still, be as safe as you can when using it. Here are 3 quick-fire tips that may help you if you're new to using braid in carp angling. Tip 1, buy a finger stool. Braid will at some point cut your finger. You might think it won't, but it will, especially in this diameter. It's light wire and it will cut through your finger. Especially when you're leaning into the cast more and putting more power behind it, the finger that's holding the line on the cast will get cut. Using a finger stool will definitely help it. I've included a link in the description below for you to go and take a look at some finger stools. Tip number 2, avoid wind knots by giving the braid a little splash with some water before the cast. It doesn't mean dunk the reel right under the water, because some reels do take on water. This just means a light splash on the spool. Getting it wet slightly will help on the cast, stopping a crosswind that might catch the line and creating a small wind knot. Tip number 3, add rig tubing. Adding rig tubing just above the lead, covering the first foot or more of the braided main line, will not only protect the fish from braid that could potentially lift scales up should the fish roll over the braid. But if you're also using tubing that is tungsten impregnated, this will help in both worlds, not only protect the fish, but it will also help keep everything pinned down to the lake or riverbed for situations when you need it. So there you have it, a number of reasons why using braid as your main line can help improve a number of things in your angling. Ultimately, offering a more responsive line, helping you to fish with more accuracy and confidence when either fishing at mega range or up close to them snaggy areas. For anyone interested in the products seen in this video from PB Products, I've left all the links below that will take you over to Big Carp Tackle, where you can actually take a look at these items and buy them and try them for yourself. If you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And don't forget, if you do subscribe, hit that notification bell, and that will keep you up to date on all my carpy goings on. Also, for anyone looking for more in-depth product reviews, soon to be released / new items, and all things carpy right here in the USA, head over to Big Carp News to find out more, including the new Big Carp News podcast. I'll leave the link for that right in the description below as well. And as always, thanks for watching.